This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by Globalspeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of Globalspeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Kyle, welcome to Tech Talk.
Hey, Frank. Glad to be joining you today.
Certainly one of the hot subjects of the moment. Everything connects, everything connects to supercomputers. Everything is high speed. Capacity is unlimited. Data is the king of the road in terms of direction and even predictive direction. Still, the bigger issue is cloud and cloud security and cloud evolution and what's it all going to do to change and disrupt what's ahead for the new economy. Let's start talking a little bit about that because I know you guys are into cloud anywhere, and I think that's really important to talk a little bit to our audience about. But give us a general perspective on, number one, I think most of us understand the technology, but where is it at now and kind of where is it going?
I think we're certainly in an era where cloud is generally accepted as a go-to strategy, right? We're in a cloud-first world. I think one of the challenges with that, though, for the majority of businesses, particularly when you think about traditional industries, medical, legal, financial services, is how do we really get there? There's still a lot of what we call legacy applications and workloads that run in offices and data centers that aren't really built to live in that cloud world. So the way we view the market today is there's still a lot of transition happening and a lot of companies trying to define what cloud means for them and how do they get there to take advantage of what we call consumption-based IT.
Well, and certainly we watched so many things evolve. I mean, I will say to my clients, it starts with a spark, and then the grass fire starts, and all of a sudden everything's ablaze. How quick things have rapidly moved. You mentioned legacy equipment and legacy infrastructure. Certainly, like for example in the fintech area, but I know a lot of small and medium manufacturers, 20 million, that kind of thing. They'll say to you, basically, the cliche would be a man can make the same mistake for years and call it experience. If a guy's doing 20 million a year and he's a happy camper using a legacy system, and you want him to walk away from that into a new digital environment with all of the other aspects of this new disruption, I guess, for lack of a better term. I mean, you mentioned, I guess it's a case where it's almost as bad as having a bad business plan, right? Can they survive without moving into that environment?
Probably. I mean, the reality is that their business probably would be okay, but for how long is really the question, right? And what are the opportunity costs for not making that change? I think one of the things that has evolved for IT is not being an isolated expertise, right? Which is really kind of the origin story of IT. Now it's a much more integrated part of the organization and of the strategy, and has financial impact, operational impacts, as well as compliance and security. And so viewing it as a more holistic piece of the business is kind of the challenge of IT leaders and IT operators today, right? It's kind of cliche to say that IT has always been viewed as a cost center, but really it can be a great enabler of the user experience that a company is trying to generate. And I think it's advantageous for IT leadership and operators to look at how they can increase that value. And sometimes that's that can be a little intimidating or new or unwanted, but I think it's going to be necessary for businesses going forward.
I don't think there's any dispute. The more that we get involved, we don't deal like vertically with any one segment. We deal horizontally in the thought leadership discussion. So, you hear so many times it's the same thing, only different. It's kind of a cliche, but the reality of it is that the core infrastructure in many cases and the demands on that infrastructure, when I mentioned earlier about supercomputers and high-speed connectivity and all those kind of things, they relate to so many industries across the board that, if you're a first-generation entrepreneur or a startup company, it's kind of a struggle to invest in something and not be absolutely sure or even compounding it by investing in something not so sure that you know is going to evolve and change. I would think most people would kind of wait. But I mean, I get the reality of the circumstance. Being a spectator, we'll talk to a CIO, and like you're mentioning, I mean, the evolution of that position has gone into the boardroom, and now carries with it all of that capability and technology. And I'm often wonder, how do they stand that kind of test of time? How do they deal with, in their own position, the kind of leadership to be able to see the trends and see what's happening, even though it's not for sure. We're still kind of dealing with what's the future going to look like, and then set up actual recommendations for a major investment, to make a radical change. I just think that, so much of it is certainly the capability and the technology, but I would think relationships, trust, subject matter experts, a lot of that stuff is redundant, but I would think you got to almost ferret out somebody that you can have that kind of a relationship with, because can you do it alone? I mean, I don't know that you can do it by yourself without getting help on the outside. So, I mean,
no. Yeah, I mean, to your point, right? It comes down to what are the goals and objectives of the business, and how does IT play into that? And I think what we're seeing is the evolution of in-house IT is away from what you might call mundane tasks, right? It's servers, storage, networking. Really, it's about conversations about applications and user experience. And that's really what CIOs today are being asked to do, right? They're being asked to focus on those applications, whether they're for productivity in-house with employees or user experience to users and customers, and the things that are really the value-add, revenue-driving activities in the company. And I really think that's how cloud has started to take a place in the relationship with businesses and with enterprise. It's allowing internal teams to be focused on what is unique to their business, and to let the things that aren't unique, patching, hardware replacement, power to the data center, outsource those things, right? There's no competitive advantage to doing what everybody else can do. So let's spend our money on internal IT resources that make us unique, that really add value and give us a competitive advantage in the marketplace.
It's spot on. I just think the bottom line in so many cases is it's a commodity. I mean, the challenge is that when we all reach this level of intelligence, a level of capability, technological advancement, wouldn't you say that in a lot of the cases, these services, again, I heard a discussion with one of my clients the other day about the difference between a vendor and a partner, and that in so many cases, that vendor attitude is becoming more of a case of knowing the value of the price of everything and the value of nothing. And I don't mean the vendor, but I'm saying that the attitude towards that kind of relationship versus one that's sort of consultative, I guess, for lack of a better term. So I guess, again, here I'm coming around one more time and just reinforcing the fact that, the inevitability, and I'll say to a client, invest in the inevitable, the inevitability is that these things will ultimately become somewhat of a commodity, don't you think? I don't mean to be negative about it, but I mean realistically, I'm going to plug it into the wall and it's going to work and it's going to do what I want. I'm talking in terms of electricity as being an example. In this case, it's going to be that kind of an advanced technology capability, but everybody's going to have it. So now I guess we're kind of dragging that along into the conversation and saying, can you, if you agree with that, or give us some opinion on how you feel about that point. But the other side of it is what kind of impact on the basic infrastructure, what are the trends and the patterns that you see that people are going to have to be sensitive to and address, whether it's cloud or not, as far as what is going to happen over, say, the next 2 to 5 years?
It's a really good question. So I think, to your point about commodity, is we're certainly head that way, right? If public cloud and elastic cloud have taught us anything, is that infrastructure really is a commodity, right? If you go and ask a CEO, if we're in a sales situation with a customer and we're talking to their executives, nobody talks about the server that it's running on or the storage that it's running on. The conversation really is around applications. And again, to hark on my earlier point, is that's what's unique to their business, right? They care that they can get to, a basic example would be email, right? I think about receiving my communication. I don't think about the server that's deploying it as an everyday user. And that is what makes infrastructure a commodity, right? It really is the medium upon which applications and data and ultimately insights are delivered. And so where does that take us in the marketplace? And we have the large public cloud providers, Amazon and Microsoft and Google. But not everybody is built for that world. Not all applications are created for that type of architecture. And so what we're getting into is how do we move to that application-oriented, data-focused world and consume infrastructure as a commodity? Are there other options other than just public cloud? Or how do we transition from where we are today to that world? And sometimes it's a chasm, right? It's like crossing the Grand Canyon for some companies. And that's kind of where we view the market, is that there are other infrastructure options available in a consumption model that may look more customized or more specific to that business's needs, that can be consumed in the marketplace and give you what may feel like traditional control or insight, but with a consumption-based cost model. So the market's going to adjust to providing what businesses need. And 10, 20 years from now, will all applications be rewritten to be in a fully elastic model? I don't know. But from what we know from edge computing and Internet of Things and these other high network demanding technologies, is that there's still a lot of evolution to take place.
Well, absolutely. And again, the quest of whether you can reach out 20 years or two. I mean, you mentioned 10 or 20 years from now. I think of all of the promise that could be achieved in terms of what we dreamed that could happen, happens, and then it hybrids on each other and put it into a supercomputer situation, and boom. I'm not so sure it would take all that long to evolve. And in many cases, I think the culture speed of adaptation, wouldn't you agree, has kind of been phenomenal over the last couple of years versus what it used to be a few years before. I mean, I think people are willing to at least experiment and adopt some of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see most businesses do it, kind of call it step by step, right? They might move a workload or a specific application and leave other things running, and that's the beauty of this model. It's not an all or nothing. It's okay to move a little bit or move a specific part of the business into that cloud model and test it. Or what we tell clients is there is not necessarily one right answer for everything, right? One application, one function may work better in one architecture and another in a different. And so the challenge for today is how can you consume those different architectures, different models, but maintain overall management and not have that be overly burdensome.
Well, from the outside looking in, I think you hit it spot on. I mean, I think it's a lot of cases where they feel like they got to either don't or do. And I think the idea of a step-by-step, it maybe not be a revelation to a lot of the guys in your business, but I think from the outside looking in, I'm not that sure that many of the players that, the owners and the operators actually understand that concept. I mean, certainly I'm not making a universal statement that everybody does, but I think far and away, it's like you either have to walk away from it or embrace it, and that's a tough decision. And I think that step-by-step approach is really, really a solid one to go by. Do you offer that kind of a situation for, say, small companies, or is it a case where that's something that they would have to source out and look for more information on? Is that something that you guys do in an analysis, like, for example, when you go in? Do you set it up a situation to determine that? Go ahead.
Yeah, we do. So at Lume, we've developed what we call a cloud set model, and it's basically a set of questions that allow for kind of introspection, if you will, on the application or workload that a company is evaluating to outsource, right? And cloud is just one of the ways that infrastructure can be outsourced. But it really requires triangulating on the cost model that the company wants to consume. That's things like, do they have capital that they want to buy equipment with, or are they looking for an operating expense model month to month? Are there any compliance or security constraints? Are there performance requirements? What are the operational capabilities or capacities of the company? And if you can kind of triangulate in on some of those questions, you can really understand, what the right infrastructure option is for you. And it may be Microsoft Azure, or it may be a private cloud, or we see often clients find co-location is the right option for you. You own the equipment, but you're outsourcing it into the data center. So it really depends. And the reality is, small businesses have the same challenges that large businesses do. The spend's not as large, but they still are application and technology dependent and need a cost-effective way to operate that and have reliability and security top of mind.
I can think of a phrase that I think Jobs said it, and that is, people don't know what they want until they see it. I think so much of innovation is, in a way, driven by the capability to handle, actually achieve the technology rather than necessarily a market already waiting for it. But of course, the other side of it is giving new tools and new opportunities. New markets open up. So there's no two ways about the fact that I still think this area of innovation is sort of a bridging, obviously, from, we use a line, one of our clients is actually putting together a museum on vintage computers, and we'll say innovation past forward, that it really is a continuum. It's not something that spontaneously happened yesterday, but an evolution of generations, 2 or 3 incarnations of executives and inventors that have kind of taken it here, there, and then today we say something like, say a supercomputer or a cloud or whatever. And I think you agree with this, that when you talk to the old guys, the old guard, they'll say the same thing and say, oh, clouds, we had clouds back in our day, and we did. But the reality of it is, it's the same thing, only different in the fact that it's been enabled, and obviously with the other connectivity, the reality of it is it's here and it's going to happen. Let's talk one moment real quickly, because I'm psyched about an opportunity to talk to you guys, because I hear so much of your reputation and being innovators and thought leaders, but still also respective to the the risk factor and the trust that's needed to make these decisions. But bottom line, how does it all add up? Truth be known, and there's a number of companies out there that are really trying to fight for that top position. Let's talk just for a moment as we close. What are you guys doing that you think are going to stand that test, do the market competition, and come out the other end playing Rocky and feeling like you just won the game?
Great question. So for us, successful clients means successful Lume. And so we really focus our conversations on what the companies that we're working with need. And the concept of our model that we call Cloud Anywhere is that there isn't one right answer for every company or every situation. So our portfolio of services and data center locations has been built with the specific purpose of opening up a full range of infrastructure options, co-location, private cloud, public cloud, and helping, from an architectural and planning perspective, helping our customers be successful by identifying and then creating a solution around which one or many of those need to be combined for their situation. So we do have lots of good competitors in the marketplace, and there are lots of options. And as that infrastructure continues to commoditize, companies are going to look to augment their internal capabilities and experience. And as they become more focused on applications, they're going to need a good partner they can count on and who can couple with them to co-manage their future environments. And we feel well positioned to do that through taking the time to listen and evaluate that situation with them, and then allow them not just one solution, but access to all the solutions that may make up the right architecture for them.
And the tough part is what you said, and that is nobody has all the answers, and maybe one person did a long time ago, but you know where I'm going. But that's no longer the case. And I guess the bottom line, again, we'll end it with this, though, is that I think for some of our listeners that are regular, we know we talk about these things all the time. The amount of noise, the amount of hyperbole, how difficult it is, even if you're sourcing, I mean, the amount of pressure on the average CIO just to put put a request out for a proposal, that's got to be just one more thing added to a whole lot of challenges that they face every day. And some of those things, when you don't have the background and you don't have the information, and you're trying to do it by yourself, it's going to be worse in terms of taking that much longer to be able to even come up with a confident recommendation. So I think that the bottom line still comes all the way around of, guys, you got to break through the noise and make a couple of choices and talk to a couple of companies. And I'm not pitching, I just believe it, that it's got to be Lume as part of one of those buying decisions criteria. And I'm going to say to you, Kyle, as we close, maybe just give a little insight real quick on what the future holds for you guys and how a person might want to get a hold of you if they really wanted to get some help.
Sure. Future for us is bright. We're continuing to add locations. We believe that the edge is really critical, whether that's for compliance, security, performance, and giving the marketplace options for where their applications and data live. So this year we're opening Phoenix, Arizona, Dallas, Texas, and in the Northeast in the tri-state area on top of our existing global footprint. So future is bright for us. I think this is a proven model that companies are looking to outsource to augment their internal capabilities and to become more focused and a larger piece of the revenue story of their companies. But if you want to learn more, you can reach us at lumecloud.com, and we're always happy to help.
Kyle, I know you're busy. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us for a few minutes today on Tech Talk.
Thanks, Frank.